So we have another returning caller. Kay wants to talk about and resume a discussion about my ethnic identity. Kay from nowhere. You're live.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Kay.
I heard you got sniped.
Say again?
I heard you got sniped.
I did.
Damn.
You know what?
I
I'm glad for it. I'm glad for it. I think that I was doing something that can be done. That is, I've taken some responsibility and trying to do the right thing. So anyway,
That's cool.
yeah. So what's up?
Well, I remember during our last call, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, you mentioned something about identifying with being Azteca, and that when you were with your white friends, you felt like you were like the odd one out.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to ask you, is this how you felt, or is this how they made you feel?
Ooh, that's a good question. Can I actually put something out there first, because this is a really, really good time to point this out. If I speak in Spanish on streams, I know that there are some people who really want to speak in Spanish in the live chat, but we don't currently have mods who speak Spanish. And so for those who are in the live chat who are just like, hey, I just posted, thank you for standing up for other Latinos, in the atheist community, and you got modded, it's because the mods don't know what's going on. So until we can get some Spanish speaking mods, please be patient and understanding that we're limited. I can't mod and host at the same time. And so
What do they think, that they're like cursing at you or something?
well, I mean, it could be anything. You know what I mean? I can read it, but I won't be able to host at the same time, and so we're just limited.
Gotcha.
And yeah,
I offer to help.
Kay, you reach out to us, and we may very well take you up on that. I'd appreciate that. But back to your question: do I feel that way, or was I made to feel that way? I don't know if I can actually make that distinction, because I when it comes to other people, I don't necessarily know their intentions. I know that in like a lot of Mexican families, having an aunt or an uncle, tía or tía, go by güero or güera, for being light skinned. That's just a thing, and that it's often a loving nickname. Was the intent to ostracize that person? No. But could that person have felt ostracized by it? Yeah, absolutely.
So do you have like an anecdote that you would like to share? Because it doesn't really sound like you were made to feel in any way.
Sure. So when I was in middle school, I really kind of wanted to dive into being Latino. My abuela, she would get me all the stuff that the other kids were wearing at my age, and so she'd get me chains, gold and silver chains, and chain bracelet and all of that. And I dressed in the way that I saw other Mexican kids dressing. And yeah, I was made fun of for it, because wanting to get into that, it was a closed door. It definitely was not something that I was allowed into. Now, don't get me wrong, there were teachers, there were older adults who were just like, yeah, embrace your heritage, but other kids are cruel. And no, I just I didn't have a I grew up in a household that didn't speak Spanish at home. And because of that, I think that to them, that was the distinction that they were making, that we didn't have that in common. But what I walked away from it was, Eric, you're just a phony,
Okay. Well, I thought I was gonna have a more combative call with you, but it doesn't sound like it's gonna be that way.
Well, I mean,
Let me.
Kay, I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve here.
No, that's cool. That's all right. No worries. Well, this is what I wanted to say, right?
Yeah. What's up?
In the pursuit of being the ultimate individual, I just gave up on my national identity and ethnic identity, and so like there was once this one occasion where I was like walking on the street and some fucking drunk what do you call it frat boy just said out of nowhere, "Go back to your country, you insert slur here," And I was
Oh
like, yeah,
yeah.
whatever, it's no more of surface insult than just insulting me or making fun of my nose or ears or something, right? But if someone were to say, "Hey, you're stupid," you're messing with part of my identity, which is like I consider myself to be a somewhat intelligent person, right?
Hmm.
So ethnic identities, I never really understood them
Sure.
because it's after all something that somebody else called you, and in 100 years, right? This country may not even exist, and so what am I at that point, right? It's
Yeah. Oh no, no, no. I
I would
okay. I think that's a really, really important distinction to make. I love that. Let's go on with that for just a little bit. Yeah.
sure.
So I know plenty of people who really, really love the 23andMe test, who take the because they want to know their DNA, right? My birth father and that whole family, I have cut myself off from, for good reason. I have separated myself from them. I think my life is better not exploring that. And so because of that, I'm not super interested in what comes back in the 23andMe test. And so when it comes to that kind of heritage tracking, it can be really important to some people and not super important to other people. But when it comes to identity, here is my experience. This is not going to be true of everyone's experience, but in my experience, here's what I've seen. And for people who have seen differently, write down in the comments, and I'll tell you what I've seen. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
My grandpa came to the United States when he was 13. Right. He was born and raised in Guadalajara, Mexico until 13. So as much as you were raised at 13. Um, and he's when it comes to identity, I don't think he has any, questions or worries about it. You know, he is American and he's also Mexican. And I don't think he has anything to prove to anybody because I think the experience of immigrating for him was probably a very cathartic one, right? Um, when it comes to my parents, right, my mother and my uncles. Um, by the way, I have gotten permission from my mom to talk about my family. She was like, "Eric, that's your family. You can talk about it." So I don't feel awful about this. Um, but I've also seen it in, first in the United States born generations, that there's definitely a sense of wanting to belong in the culture that you're being raised in, but feeling like you don't have that culture yourself. And so while all the other kids are pulling out sandwiches with Wonder Bread, you're pulling out tacos. I think you're definitely winning with the tacos, but if you want to fit in with the other kids, that's probably a bummer. I know a lot of people who are first generation immigrants who totally drop their cultural identity, in an effort to um, fit in. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that that is the experience that they had. In fact, they all went on to marry white people. So take from that what you will. And I know that's the case for plenty of other cultures that I've been around. That that has been the case. Now, second generation, or oh my gosh, here's another one. When I worked in a school district, it was in a very, very predominantly Mexican community, right? It was a farming agricultural community. There were parents who refused to speak Spanish to their kids because they wanted their kids to only learn English, right? Creating this barrier of language between them and their own children because they wanted those kids to fit in. I feel like for kids who grew up in that environment, or an environment where, yeah, their heritage is being pushed away, maybe because their parents were trying to get away from it, there's a backlash of wanting to learn, to discover for yourself what that cultural identity is. And so for a lot of those kids, I think that identity is very important to them because they don't feel like they've had it given to them or that they got to experience it firsthand in a way, quote unquote. So I won't dictate to them what's important. And Kay, I will not dictate to you what's important to you. But I think giving context might help other people understand where you're at. If you're valuing losing your cultural identity, I think you may have good reason. Whatever your reasons are, then I'm going to support you. But I wouldn't advocate that for everybody because people have different needs.
Yeah, I mean, I can explain a little bit why.
Sure.
I just wanted to get rid of it. It wasn't because I wanted to fit in. I was born in the United States. I was raised in Mexico. I speak both languages.
Nice.
The only reason I just felt like I didn't need it anymore is because I didn't feel like it was conducive to having a good identity.
Why?
Feeling like you want
Why?
Why? Well, what do I get from being Mexican? Good food and I suppose a funny nickname. But at the end of the day, once you go back to Mexico and you start talking to people, you realize that it's just the same as talking to everybody else. There's going to be differences, and you really can't form a community around that. There's going to be more things that you need to be have in common with people in general.
Sure.
Atheists, for example, if I go to Mexico, right, and if I want to fit in, I start talking about atheism, and all of a sudden, I'm again the odd one out.
Sure.
So if I have friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you like masturbating and pizza and fucking video games, that's all I fucking need to be friends with you. I don't need anything else.
Okay.
I don't feel American, right? I know I was born here, but I don't have that American identity or that fucking impulse to feel proud of wherever I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in a society where we've mastered the fucking solar energy and we're a type 3 civilization, there's not going to be this race pride or national pride or anything like that. It's just not going to be useful for us anymore. And I don't. Yep.
Okay, can I ask you a personal question? If you don't want to answer it, I totally understand. Anything about that, by the way, you have the right to draw any lines you want. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have a support system?
What do you mean by that?
People who care about you, or people that you care about, that you're part of a kind of a group. Doesn't matter how big it is or small it is. It could be a family. It could be a group of friends who chose each other, to take care of each other. But do you feel like you have, a gaming group or just a group that you belong to?
Well, sure. I carved one for myself. When I was young, I was always like a militant atheist. You growing up, I don't know if you remember this, but during one of the calls, I told you that I became an atheist when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always fought against my family whenever they would tell me to go to church or that I was possessed or something.
Sure.
But this was my grandma, by the way. It wasn't like my uncles. They understand where I come from, and
yeah. So you're saying that you carved out a community for yourself. Is that
by being just very combative, about who I was.
Would you?
And they just eventually understood where it was coming from, and they accepted it.
Do you have an expectation that everybody should do that, or everybody can do that?
I don't know if this is a very good analogy, but I say that if you want to be an atheist in Afghanistan, you should know how to shoot an AK. And so if you want to be something different here in the United States, you can either be in the closet forever or just fight. And eventually you will win. You will lose some fights and you will win many more. So, yeah.
I disagree entirely. Growing up, I was lucky enough to have a couple of teachers who, protested with Cesar Chavez, right? Who were on the front lines of a lot of really, really important Latino civil rights pushes in their lives. And what they advocated for us was to, have you heard the whole model minority thing, right? Where you go, you represent.
What is it?
Where you go, you represent. So
yeah, and I felt that before. I felt judged before, and I always tell those people that don't fucking ask me to, represent an entire group. I am myself, and but I'm sure that the ways in which I acted, be it good or bad, some people came out of that, thinking, "Oh, these fucking people are like
right."
This or that.
Yeah. What's true of you must be true of the whole group, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't want to.
I again, this kind of goes back to the same reason why I got snipped. If you can, I think you should. But if that is not where you're at, then I totally understand if you don't. I think that there are a lot of people who find value in their cultural heritage, where they come from, because often it gives them senses of community, it gives them a sense of belonging, and it sounds like, hey, you don't need that, but I wouldn't go.
No, I
so
do. I do need that.
No, I'm sorry. I'm
once-
sorry. I said that poorly. Okay, you don't need that from from being Mexican or being Latino.
That's not it. That's not it. It's just that I understand that once you go to, in your case, Mexico, you're once again going to be the odd one out because you're an atheist, because you snipped yourself, and that's not something that's very looked, very nicely upon. It's
Right.
just that it doesn't really matter. Wherever you are in the world, you're always going to be a little different from the others, and it's better to just try to put the ethnic and national and gender differences aside, everything else that it's just like an immutable characteristic about yourself, and just like focus on your ideas. I think that's what creates a stronger community, because if like here in the United States, right, you have the most what is it? I'm sorry.
No, I so that feels very what's the word? Optimistic in a way. But
really, how?
Well, because if we lived in that kind of world, there's the assumption that people aren't being discriminated against based on those same distinctions. So,
I'm not saying that I'm not discriminated, not at all. I'm saying that once you speak to those people, they realize that you're different, and then you're not, you don't base your identity around those things, and they can be more freely. I've spoken to racists before, and they've told me a lot of shit, and I've told them, hey man, listen, every person is his own world, and I was gonna say, here in America, right, you have the most what do you call it,
hold
social
on.
justice warrior person. Yep.
So the social justice conversation I'm happy to have. I just don't want to get too far away, because there's so do you think, like, in a perfect world, okay, where in a world where everyone pretends that they don't have different cultural backgrounds, do you think that the discrimination would go away?
I wouldn't say pretending. I would just say putting it aside, because it's just something that people imposed upon me. But I would say,
let's use your language. So if everybody put it aside, I disagree.
Yes, because you're just dividing people in many other ways,
Well, so I don't think it's my decision that racists would pick me out and be aggressive towards me. I don't think that's my decision. I think that's their decision. And because it's right. So I think me deciding on a thing is not going to get away or remove their prejudice. And if they decided that they were going to put their heritage aside, or their cultural history, I don't think that would remove their prejudice either. And so by recognizing what those distinctions are, what those differences are, we can make sure that we look out for those groups that are being discriminated against. I think that's very important.
I just remembered an analogy that I wanted to say about this.
Okay, what's up?
Let's think about religion for a second, right? In every country, instead of having ethnic groups, we have religions, right? And the Mexicans are the Catholics, and U.S. is Christians or whatever, or fucking Mormons. You get the point, right? And you're arguing that we should all, we should all have different religions, and we should identify with our religions. And I'm here saying, let's just get rid of religions altogether and think in a better way, and just disregard all this shit. I think that's where our differences are.
I agree, but if one group is being particularly awful, I think identifying what that group is going to help us be able to push back against whatever awful thing they're doing.
Yeah, but you're fighting fire with fire at that point.
No, you're just being practical. I think that there's a practicality there, which is why I think it's optimistic where you're coming from. Is I want to live in a world where that would happen, but I'm much more pessimistic than you. Okay, I think that even if I made those changes and everybody else made those changes, I don't think the problems would go away. I think it would just make it harder for us to identify and single out where the problem is coming from.
No, because I'm telling you, like there's the racist, right, and then there's everybody else who just tries to form a community around ideas and not ethnic backgrounds, right? Once you have that group set up, right, and the racists are like, oh, you this and that, people are gonna be like, shut the fuck up and just eat pizza with us. Who gives a shit what color or whatever you're from? You know, it doesn't matter really.
Okay,
and
I
people change. You gotta give even racists the ability to like change their opinions.
So I totally agree. I just don't want to infantilize them and assume that they're going to change. I will listen to them where they are and, go from there. But yeah. I think that it treats them like a child, thinking that they're going to grow into not being racists anymore. I think that's a world that I would like to live in, but I don't think that's the world that I do live in. Kay, I would have this discussion with you a whole lot more, but I do have other callers on the line. I hope this was beneficial.
Let me just give you another analogy.
Okay, right? and then we're going to go. So I'll let you close out. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I was going to say that, in America here, you have the SJWs, and you have on the other side the fucking conservatives.
Oh, we stuck a pin in that. That's right. Okay.
And so if you have those total different groups under the label American, then what does it even mean to be an American? And the same is going to be for every other country, and you're going to be different everywhere, regardless of where you're from. And so just give up on the idea of ethnic things, yada yada. Thank you. I think that was what I was going to say.
Okay. I feel like there's so much baked into that if I gave like a quick answer, it would do a disservice on all sides. Yeah, it's going to take the entire call. Yeah, that's all right, man. No, that's okay. Okay, why don't you call back another time? Because I'm happy to talk to you about it. I do think that it is important to make those distinctions, although I am doing my best to try and understand where you're coming from, and I'm glad that you're doing the same. Thank you for calling in.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So I know you guys are probably like, oh, that seemed way too pleasant. I'm upset at Eric for not yelling at that. That is frustrating to me. My blood is up a little bit. But was that going to lead to a conversation where anybody's mind was changed if I got super angry there? No. So is it worth it for me to sit back, try and understand where Kay is coming from and meet Kay where he's at? Yeah, absolutely.